On certain nights, if the sky is clear and the world has hushed itself to sleep, you might feel it, the faintest flutter above your pillow, like the brushing of a wing made from spun sugar and wind. There are whispers the stars keep, and if you listen just before sleep claims you, you may hear the echo of a soft song, barely louder than a sigh. It comes from someone small, someone gentle, gliding across the velvet sky. She moves quietly, with care and purpose, on a path older than memory itself. Tonight, that someone is beginning a journey, one you're invited to share. A journey through moonlit meadows and starlit dreams, through the hush of sleeping towns and the shimmer of childhood wonder. For tonight, we drift alongside the Tooth Fairy herself and discover the secret she's kept for longer than we've dreamed. Welcome to Sleepy Journeys, the podcast designed to lull you into a peaceful slumber with soothing stories through time, places, and ideas. Whether you're winding down after a long day or simply looking for a peaceful escape, you're in the right place. My name's Jack, and I'm so happy to have you here with me. Each night on Sleepy Journeys, we set off together on gentle adventures designed to soothe your mind and ease you into rest. You'll find journeys through history, comforting fairy tales, myths and folklore, the wonders of science, fascinating inventions, inspiring famous figures, music history, and even calm explorations around the world. No matter where your curiosity takes you, there's a dreamy Sleepy Journeys show for you. Tonight, we're going to embark on a gentle journey through the Tooth Fairy's secret. And just before we fully drift off, if you're enjoying Sleepy Journeys, go ahead and tap follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're joining me on. That way, you won't miss any of our upcoming sleepy adventures. And let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us. Now, take a deep breath, and let's begin. Imagine the hush of a late evening settling across the world, as quiet as a lullaby whispered beneath a blanket of stars. Curtains sway gently in a half-open window, stirred by a breeze no one hears, a wind so soft it barely brushes the air. In homes where the lights have dimmed and dreams have begun to rise like morning mist in reverse, a single figure stirs in the quiet sky above. She is small, no taller than a forget-me-not, and she moves on wings no louder than the flicker of candlelight. Her name is Whispelle, though she does not speak it often. Her world exists in the spaces between sleep and starlight, between the silence of midnight and the first yawn of dawn. Whispelle is a young tooth fairy, one of many, but tonight is special. Tonight marks the beginning of her first solo journey, a quiet rite of passage long anticipated in the fairy circles. The soft rustle of her wings stirs moonbeams as she glides over rooftops and gardens where the scent of jasmine rises to meet her. Each tooth she gathers holds more than enamel and childhood. It carries a whisper, a hope, a tiny echo of someone's earliest wishes. It is her task not only to collect these small treasures, but also to listen to them, to gently coax the dreams tucked within them out into the open. The stars above twinkle like eyes watching gently, kindly. Below, the towns are sleepy patchworks of stories, some held in stuffed animals with well-worn fur, others in nightlights that flicker like shy fireflies. Each home is a little nest of wonder, each pillow a portal to a dream waiting to be gently uncovered. Whispelle's journey tonight will take her across the moonlit valleys of Cloudrest, past the glimmering edges of the dreaming trees, and into the star-touched village, where time moves just a little slower and memories sparkle like dewdrops. But she begins, always, in the celestial grotto, the mossy, glowing cavern where all tooth fairies gather before they rise into the sky. Though she has practiced for years, collecting pretend teeth made from thistle dust and learning the ancient songs of the starbound, tonight is the first time she truly listens with her own heart. Each house she visits, each child's whisper she hears, will become part of her story and perhaps part of the sky itself. And so, dear dreamer, as you rest your head and breathe a little slower, know that above you, just beyond where the sky turns deep velvet blue, there are stories drifting on silver wind, carried by wings too soft to hear. Let us drift together now into that quiet night and follow Whispelle as she embarks on her first whispered journey from the stars. Above the sleeping curve of the world, where the sky deepens into its quietest shade of blue, there is a path that glows faintly in the dark, a delicate strand of silver light, barely visible to even the stars. This is the silver thread, woven long ago from stardust and forgotten lullabies. It hangs in the air like the soft shimmer of moonlight on water, stretching from one end of the horizon to the other. Only those who travel between dreams may walk upon it, and tonight, a young fairy takes her very first step. Her wings flutter in the stillness, their gentle hum no louder than the sound of a feather falling. Her name, whispered once in the hush of her celestial grotto, is Whispelle. A name passed down through gentle generations, like a song hummed across centuries. She hovers at the thread's edge, where the world below disappears into velvet clouds, and the sky above pulses with the hum of ancient nighttime magic. The thread feels like silk beneath her feet, not solid, not weightless, and yet it holds her. As she begins to move forward, the path responds with a soft shimmer, awakening at her touch. Every few steps, the silver pulses softly, lighting up faint footprints left by other fairies who have come before her, each a quiet echo of a past journey. These glowing marks fade gently behind her, never needing to be erased, for the sky keeps no clutter, only memory. Whispelle carries a pouch across her shoulder, stitched from petals and whisper fiber. Inside are tiny scrolls, each rolled from gossamer and written with starlit ink. These are her maps. Each scroll holds the essence of a dreamer's moment, a milk tooth placed beneath a pillow, wrapped in hope, nestled in sleep. Her task is to visit them gently, collect their offerings, and leave behind a shimmer, something soft, something small, something magical. Beneath her, the world moves slower than usual. Houses blur into soft lights, chimneys exhale wisps of evening memory, and trees sway only when no one is looking. The towns are drowsy, their stories tucked in. Whispelle can see the glimmer of dream threads rising from each rooftop, curling like gentle smoke toward the sky. Some are new and bright, the dreams of children who fell asleep smiling. Others are faint and slow, touched by worry or forgotten sadness. Whispelle gathers each with equal care. For every child, no matter their dream, is a star waiting to be seen. A faint bell chimes in the distance, the signal from the celestial grotto that her journey is underway. It is a bell that rings softly in your heart, a tone that signals the world has shifted just slightly, that dreams are now in motion. She moves gracefully now, wings unfurling with confidence, her small fingers brushing the silvery edge of the thread with each step. She moves with purpose, with rhythm, with the kind of softness only the night can teach. The silver thread narrows ahead, curving toward a quiet expanse where moonlight pools gently across the clouds. She knows what lies beyond, the floating bridge of sleep, where thoughts drift like petals on a stream. Before she crosses it, she pauses for a moment, pressing her hand to her heart. She whispers something to the sky, a promise, or perhaps a lullaby, and the thread beneath her glows a little brighter in return. Tonight, the stars are listening. Long before the silver thread shimmered into view, before Whispelle's wings stirred the sleeping air, her journey began deep within the heart of the sky, in a place hidden from all but the most ancient of breezes and the gentlest of stars. It is here, beneath a curtain of starlit ivy, and within the moss-covered mouth of a hollow cloud peak, that the celestial grotto rests. It reveals itself only when night is ready and the winds hum the proper tune. The grotto is alive with quiet magic. Its walls are shaped from the bones of forgotten constellations, its floor padded with moss that never grows damp, and its light comes memories of moonbeams long since past. It was within this ancient, glowing chamber that Whispelle prepared herself for the journey ahead. She had arrived just before twilight began to melt across the sky, her wings still trembling with quiet excitement. All around her, other fairies had already begun their rituals, a murmured lullaby here, a silver thread polishing there. Some huddled around dream maps, whispering the names of sleeping children like blessings. Others sat in stillness, eyes closed, letting the rhythm of the night settle into their wings. Whispelle's corner of the grotto was soft and round, her personal nook lined with velvet lichens and warm feather down. From a tiny shelf carved into a crescent moonstone, she reached for her tools, each one a gift from elder fairies, passed down with care. First, the moon spoon, carved from drifted moonbeam and shaped like a scoop, for gently lifting the collected teeth from under pillows without stirring even the deepest sleeper. Its handle shimmered faintly, always cool to the touch, and hummed a sound not unlike a mother's hush. Next, the sleep pouch, sewn from petal threads of midnight poppies, soft enough to cradle dreams without waking them. Into this, Whispelle would place the little treasures she found, the teeth, yes, but also the dream fragments wrapped within them, small wishes, giggles from earlier that day, a lingering question about growing up, a remembered hug. She checked her star compass too, a circular pendant that spun slowly when dreams gathered nearby. It glowed gently with direction, not pointing to north or east, but to wonder, kindness, and need. Its patterns shifted depending on what kind of dream waited, a wish lost in sadness, a hope carried by laughter, or a simple story left untold. Whispelle sat for a moment in stillness, breathing in the grotto's quiet scent, something like warm cinnamon and soft rain. The ceiling above pulsed with slow-moving constellations, like stories floating just beneath the surface of sleep. She watched them for a while, letting their rhythms slow her thoughts. She was ready. She trusted the night to teach her what she needed. Around her, the elder fairies began to hum. It was tradition, a gentle hymn made from the syllables of names no longer spoken, the lullabies of distant generations. The notes were long, curved, and low, carrying the softness of thousands of dreams safely gathered and quietly remembered. As the final note faded into silence, Whispelle's pouch tightened slightly around her shoulder. Her star compass gave a low shimmer. The moss gate at the grotto's edge peeled back like a yawn, and the first sparkles of the silver thread drifted into view beyond the opening. She stepped toward it slowly, reverently. With her breath as calm as a still pond, Whispelle lifted her wings and began her journey into the open night. The silver thread wound forward like a slow lullaby, guiding Whispelle toward a place that shimmered even in the gentlest darkness, a soft expanse suspended between wakefulness and dreaming. This was the floating bridge of sleep, a place known only to those who travel on wings too light for morning and hearts attuned to the rhythm of dreams. It wasn't a bridge in the way we might imagine. There were no wooden planks, no railings, no sounds of footsteps echoing across it. Instead, it stretched like a sleepy sigh, formed from countless drifting thoughts, yawn-warmed wishes, and fragments of stories left unfinished. Threads of imagination curled through the air like lazy ribbons, connecting one drifting cloud to another in a loose, luminous web. As Whispelle stepped onto it, the bridge adjusted to her weight with welcome. It dipped slightly beneath her, like a dandelion caught in a breeze, and rose again with each measured breath. Around her, stardust sparkled in gentle spirals, catching in her hair and wings like firefly kisses. The air here was unlike any other place in the sky. It tasted like the moment before a dream begins, soft, warm, filled with potential. Faint echoes surrounded her, a giggle from a memory, the hush of a bedtime story only half heard, a question whispered just before sleep. Each sound curled in the distance and faded again. Beneath the bridge, clouds drifted slow and thick. Some glowed pale pink, full of laughter and sugar-dusted daydreams. Others were blue, deep and velvet-like, pulsing with the quiet of long-forgotten wishes. Whispelle let her fingers trail through the air as she passed, catching little vibrations of stories in her hands. Each pulse held a different rhythm, the echo of a lullaby sung 3 days ago, the heartbeat of a child who fell asleep holding their teddy close. She paused in the middle of the bridge as tradition guided. All young fairies on their first journey were taught to stop here, to look directly down into the clouds of dream stuff below. Whispelle leaned forward, and as she peered through the soft, drifting mists, the clouds opened gently to reveal glimpses of the sleeping world. A child lay curled beneath a quilt shaped like stars. Another held a storybook still open in one hand. A small hand twitched slightly, as if waving in a dream. All across the earth, soft movements like this flickered in and out of view, delicate and fleeting. And Whispelle watched each one with a quiet smile. These were the dreamers she traveled for, the children whose teeth carried not just memories of growing up, but tiny treasures of belief, wonder, and hope. As the clouds slowly closed again, Whispelle stood still. She raised one hand to her pouch, gently checking that her tools were secure. She breathed in the warmth of the air, and with her next breath, released a quiet note from her lips. Not a word, not a tune, but a sound older than language, the sound that fairies send out when they are ready to begin listening to the dreams themselves. The floating bridge responded in kind. Below her, the clouds shimmered, then cleared a path to where the star-touched village waited, nestled in a gentle bend of the wind. Whispelle bowed her head in gratitude, and as her wings stirred once more, the floating bridge gently dissolved behind her, its work quietly complete until the next dreamer came walking. Just beyond the curve of the floating bridge, nestled where the upper winds sigh and the night sky hangs its heaviest shade of velvet blue, lies a place known only to dream messengers and skybound wanderers. The star-touched village cannot be seen from the earth below, not even on the clearest of nights. It drifts, softly tethered to the northern winds, cradled by the breath of sleeping children. To those who find it, the village glows like a field of dew at dawn, faint and silver, pulsing with quiet magic. As Whispelle floated near, the air around her shimmered with starlight so delicate it clung to her like soft snow. The buildings of the village were built from gathered light, the kind that dreams leave behind when they slip away before morning. Rooftops shimmered with moon glow, and windows blinked with the gentle rhythm of contented sighs. The lanes between cottages curved like sleepy thoughts, winding without purpose, simply to be wandered. At the center of the village stood the wishing tree, older than any fairy alive. Its branches never stopped swaying, even when the air was still. Instead of leaves, it bore tiny lanterns, hundreds, thousands, each one glowing with the dreamlight of a sleeping child. These were the dreams not yet fully formed, gently collected and stored until their keepers were ready to remember them. Whispelle touched down lightly near the tree's base. The path beneath her feet was lined with silken moss that never made a sound. She glanced up, eyes reflecting 100 tiny glows. These lanterns were her guide. Each one pulsed softly, in rhythm with a child's breath. Some danced with laughter, flickering brightly. Others shimmered slow and deep, the dreams of quiet minds wrapped in stillness. Her star compass tugged gently, pointing to a lantern near the outer edge. It belonged to a child named Elia, who had placed a tooth beneath her pillow that very evening. Her dream, though small, glowed with something soft and strong, a curiosity wrapped in comfort, a wish nestled in wonder. Whispelle made a note, etching the lantern's echo into her scroll for later. Around her, other fairies moved through the village with silent grace. The air carried every feeling gently, like steam rising from warm tea. Some fairies paused to tend the lanterns, brushing away small clouds of forgetfulness. Others added newly gathered dreams, slipping them into the tree's bark where they would wait, quietly cradled by the wind. As Whispelle moved through the soft-lit paths, she marveled at the way the village seemed to listen, not just to the fairies, but to the dreams themselves. Every sound was a hush. Every corner seemed to whisper, "You are safe." Though she had read about the star-touched village in the old story scrolls of the grotto, being here felt entirely different. It was like stepping into a lullaby still being sung, one with no beginning and no end. The very air encouraged stillness, and Whispelle allowed herself to pause, placing a hand to the bark of the wishing tree. It was warm and pulsing gently, like the heart of the sky itself. Here, in the village above the clouds, Whispelle would begin the most delicate part of her work, gently listening for the dreams that wandered, the ones that needed guiding home. But first, she would visit the dream lantern keepers, whose quiet task was to care for each flicker of imagination with patience and grace. And so, with her wings tucked close and her heart steady, Whispelle stepped deeper into the star-touched village, where dreams found their way, and even forgotten wishes were never truly lost. At the heart of the star-touched village, beneath the gently glowing limbs of the wishing tree, lived the keepers of the dream lanterns. They were not like the fairies who traveled the skies or carried star compasses on their belts. The dream lantern keepers were quieter still, old beings woven from the same delicate threads as dusk and memory. Few ever spoke aloud. Most moved only when absolutely needed. But their presence was constant, like the hush of snowfall or the breath of someone you love sleeping beside you. Each keeper wore a robe stitched from threads of ancient dreams. You could see the shifting echoes of stories in their garments, like sunlight seen through leaves. Their hands were small and slow, perfectly suited for the delicate tending of light. Whispelle watched them as they moved through the lantern grove with steady grace. One keeper paused before a lantern that had dimmed slightly. It shimmered with a faint blue flicker, the color of confusion, perhaps a dream interrupted by worry or restlessness. The keeper raised a hand, palm open, and blew softly into the air. A warm gust, like the scent of blankets just pulled from the sun, wrapped around the lantern, and it slowly brightened again, the dream within finding its way back to stillness. Another keeper walked among the lanterns holding a basin of moon water. With each step, the liquid swirled quietly, reflecting the dreams above. Every so often, the keeper would lift a single drop on the tip of one finger and let it fall into the heart of a flickering light, as though feeding it reassurance, or perhaps a forgotten lullaby. Whispelle approached them with gentle steps, not wanting to disturb the peace they created. Though they did not speak, one of the keepers noticed her presence as acknowledgement, as if to say, "You are here, and that is enough." Together, they walked beneath the lanterns, letting the air hum softly between them. The keeper gestured toward a lantern hanging low, nearly brushing the mossy path beneath it. This one glowed a warm amber, the color of a child's comfort. Whispelle could feel the kindness it carried without even touching it. A memory of warm hands, a soft stuffed bear, the echo of a song about the moon. It was whole and calm. But nearby, another lantern shimmered with flickers of green and gray. This one felt unsettled, lost. Its dream wandered through unfamiliar corridors, unsure of what it hoped to find. Whispelle stepped closer. The keeper placed a hand on her shoulder and slowly lifted the lantern from its branch. With reverent care, they placed it into Whispelle's hands. It was heavier than she expected. The dream inside twirled in circles, trying to finish a story it hadn't begun. Whispelle closed her eyes and pressed the lantern gently to her chest, letting her own warmth and calm settle through her. For a moment, the flickering steadied. A hush passed between them. She nodded in gratitude to the keeper, who offered the tiniest of smiles, a movement no larger than a leaf's curl. The lantern, now steadier, was returned to its branch, glowing a little more evenly than before. And so they continued, Whispelle and the keeper, simply walking together beneath the branches of the tree. They visited the dreams that flickered and hummed, offering patience, attention, and the softest gift of all, presence. When at last the keepers had finished their silent tending, the path through the lantern grove opened again. Whispelle knew it was time to seek out a particular dream, one that had wandered farther than most. A dream that needed her. The dream lantern keepers faded behind her into the light, as quiet as shadows. Their work continued, unseen and uncelebrated, like most of the world's gentlest acts. Dreams, like fireflies, sometimes drift too far from their quiet nests. Most return on their own, drawn back by the steady breath of sleep or the pull of morning light. But some, the especially tender ones, born from questions left unanswered or feelings too big for daytime, get turned around. They wander. They flicker in alleyways of memory and hesitation. And when they do, a tooth fairy must follow. Whispelle left the warmth of the lantern grove and stepped onto a narrow path made of mist, one that curved gently beyond the last edge of the wishing tree's reach. Her star compass glowed faint blue, the color of a dream caught between wonder and worry. It pointed her toward the edge of the star-touched village, a place where lanterns grew dim, because their dreamers had tucked them away too tightly to be seen. The dream she followed belonged to a child named Elia, the same child whose amber lantern she had glimpsed earlier, though this strand of dream had unraveled from the main. It shimmered softly, a ribbon of pale light slipping through a garden of folded stars and tangled thought vines. Whispelle moved slowly, following the thread through dream corridors shaped like questions. Will I still be me when I grow up? Why do teeth fall out, but not wishes? Do the stars really see me back? She passed by tiny memory doors, one framed in crayon, another made of cracked seashells. A third hung open slightly, creaking with the echo of an old bedtime story that had never been finished. The dream was close now, pulsing faintly behind a curtain of fog. There, nestled in the roots of a cloudberry bush that had taken root in this in-between place, she found it, a small orb of light. It quivered as she approached. Whispelle knelt beside it, tucking her wings carefully behind her. She whispered, a lullaby of old, little dream, so soft and small, night has not forgotten you at all. Come back through the velvet sky, cradle of stars where stories lie. The dream flickered in recognition, its pulse quickening gently. Whispelle reached into her pouch and pulled out a shimmer stone, a small translucent gem that held warmth, gathered from the breath of sleeping children. She offered it in both hands, placing it gently near the dream's edge. The light responded, stretching toward it, slowly absorbing its calm. And then, as if reminded of something it had once known, the dream folded itself back into a sphere, whole again and ready to be returned. Whispelle cupped it gently, tucking it close to her chest. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat now, as though comforted by her presence. With a quiet nod, she stood and turned back toward the village. The path behind her began to close, sealing with starlight and stillness. By the time she reached the lantern grove once more, the dream lantern keepers were waiting. One reached out with a soft hand, and Whispelle placed the restored dream into their open palm. Without a word, they lifted it toward the branches of the wishing tree, which accepted it with a gentle glow, threading it back into Alea's waiting lantern. Its light bloomed slowly, like a smile returning after sleep. It had found its way home. Whispelle stood for a moment beneath the tree, her eyes soft with peace. The village hummed around her, and for just a breath, all was perfectly still. Beyond the far edge of the star-touched village, where the lantern glow softens into silvery dusk and the wind hushes even its quietest murmur, stands a solitary tree unlike any other. Twisted and ancient, it rises from a mound of slumbering roots, its bark the color of old parchment and its branches strung with strands of silver ivy. This is the Library of Forgotten Wishes, a living archive nestled in the sky's stillness, where wishes once whispered but never spoken aloud are gently cradled and kept. No roads lead to the library. It appears only when needed, often in the moments between breaths or thoughts. Tonight, drawn by a soft tug from her star compass and a hush in her heart, Whispelle arrived beneath its gently rustling limbs. The air here felt deeper, filled with the weight of silence, not from absence, but from remembering. This was not a place of sadness, but of rest, a sanctuary for the forgotten, not the lost. At the base of the tree stood a wooden archway. Etched into its frame were symbols of early childhood, tiny handprints, drawings of suns with too many rays, stars with friendly faces, and hearts uneven but whole. These were the first shapes of wishes, the ones made before language found them. Whispelle stepped inside, and the tree welcomed her. The hollow trunk expanded around her, taller than any tower and filled with rows and rows of gently glowing scrolls. Each was rolled tight and slotted into place among the living walls, their ends tied with threads of gossamer and light. As she walked softly along the inner ring of the library, a warm breeze stirred the scrolls. Some fluttered open for a moment, showing glimpses of what they held: a child's hope to meet the moon, a wish for a friend who understood, a yearning for one more bedtime story. None were grand. All were precious. The air pulsed with quiet intention. Whispelle knew she was allowed to select only one scroll tonight, a single forgotten wish to carry forward. Not to grant it, for that was not her magic, but to remember it, so it might stir gently again in the heart of the one who once dreamed it. Her fingers brushed softly across the rows until she felt a gentle warmth behind one scroll. It was the subtle pull of recognition. She took it carefully, unrolling it with hands that had tended more dreams than days. The parchment shimmered with soft gold, and written in a curl of starlit ink was a simple sentence. "I hope I never stop believing in small things." It wasn't signed. Wishes never were. But Whispelle smiled as she read it, sensing its echo through the wind. It had been a quiet wish, whispered through the simple act of wondering. likely from a child brushing a finger through their pillowcase or watching a bug crawl across a windowsill and wondering where it was going. She rolled it gently once more and slipped it into a small chamber beneath her sash, a pocket made especially for carrying wishes like this. Close to her heart. Safe. The library responded with a low hum. A soft thank you. The scrolls around her stilled, settling back into the slow rhythm of sky time. Whispelle turned, wings lowered in respect, and stepped back through the wooden arch. Behind her, the library faded quietly into mist, leaving behind only the soft scent of parchment and pine. The wind picked up again, tugging at her gently, guiding her forward, toward the next chapter in her journey. She now carried a wish, forgotten by the world, but remembered by the sky. Inside the library of forgotten wishes, time slowed to a dreamlike pace. Its stillness was full of soft echoes and quiet warmth, the kind you feel when you're wrapped in a blanket that's been waiting for you all day. The walls, formed by the tree's living wood, stretched high and wide, gently spiraling upward, like a lullaby winding its final verse. And in that spiral, resting in shelves shaped like curling leaves and cupped petals, the whispers began. Whispelle stood still and let the sound rise around her. It didn't come all at once. First came the soft hum of memory, a tone that felt like dusk settling into the corners of a child's room. Then the quiet sibilance of forgotten hopes, drifting across the shelves like wind through tall grass. Finally, the voices, gentle and featherlight, began to speak around her, like small ripples in water. They weren't voices as we know them. They didn't say hello or listen to me. Instead, they murmured with intention, like someone thinking softly in their sleep. Each whisper was tied to a scroll, and each scroll held a wish too shy to ever have been fully formed. Wishes like, I want to be brave when I'm small. I hope the stars wait for me. Please don't forget the game I made up. Whispelle moved slowly down one aisle of the tree, her wings brushing the wood as she passed. Each shelf she approached gave off a slightly different hum, some bright, some deep, some like the gentle fizz of a dream about to form. One shelf smelled faintly of peppermint and freshly turned pages, another of warm oatmeal and sunlight on wool. The memories tied to each wish curled in the air, invisible but somehow tangible. She paused at a lower shelf where the whispers were softer, less certain. These were the unspoken questions, the wishes that never reached even the heart that formed them. Whispelle knelt and placed her hand on the bark, closing her eyes. In that moment, the library opened itself to her. A flood of soft emotions brushed through her chest, joy wrapped in fear, love that had no name yet, pride quietly tucked inside shyness. She let them pass through her, like water running over stone. And then, from one corner of the shelf, a single whisper rose a little louder. It sounded like the rustle of a blanket being pulled up under a chin. Whispelle turned her head and followed it. The scroll it came from was almost hidden, wedged gently behind a curved root. She reached out and touched it. Just touching it was enough to honor it, to let it be remembered. She placed a small dew crystal near the scroll, a token of respect from one dream carrier to another. The crystal would hum quietly for days, reminding the tree to keep that wish close to the surface, just in case the child who made it ever remembered again. As she stood to leave, the whispers slowed, as if exhaling together. The library had been seen, and in return, it would keep seeing. Whispelle bowed her head one last time and turned to the spiral path that wound its way back toward the entrance. The whispers faded behind her, like waves withdrawing from shore. Some dreams are loud, some are bold. But the softest ones, the ones that barely make it to the lips, are often the ones that stay forever. Tucked in a hollow near the back of the library, where the shelves curled tighter and the light dimmed to a pearly glow, sat a pedestal formed from the heartwood of the wishing tree itself. Upon it rested a single book, always open, its pages moving not by wind, but by gentle memory. This was the storybook of celestial gifts, a living volume that recorded, in luminous ink, the delicate exchanges between dreamers and the fairies who visited them. Whispelle approached with reverence, her steps nearly silent on the moss-woven floor. No fairy ever turned the pages of the storybook themselves. Instead, the book responded to presence, to energy, to the unspoken rhythm of the heart that stood before it. As she neared, the current page gave a shimmer, a flutter, and slowly turned. Before her now was a spread written in the soft strokes of star ink, glowing pale silver. Each line flowed gently into the next, telling tales of kindness, the small kind, often unnoticed, a dimpled grin offered by a newly toothless child, a whispered thank you before sleep, the soft press of a coin beneath a pillow, and the wonder it sparked come morning. Each entry recorded not only the moment of exchange, but the feeling it left behind. One entry read, "Tonight I received a single tooth wrapped in ribbon and a note, 'For the fairy, please take care.' Left in return was a shell from the sea of whispering waves. The child smiled in their sleep. A wish was remembered." Another entry gently pulsed with light, bearing a simpler notation. "Gifted, a pebble from the dreaming river. Returned, a feather shaped like a question mark." The child giggled as they woke. "The pebble glows still." Whispelle leaned closer, breathing in the scent that rose from the pages. It was the scent of remembrance, of affection, stored like treasure. The book began to shift again. This time, the page curled slightly at the corner and presented a blank space, bordered by tiny stars that blinked like eyes closing slowly. It was her turn. She reached into her pouch and removed the scroll she had taken from the library. The forgotten wish. "I hope I never stop believing in small things." With care, she laid it upon the blank page. The stars at the edges of the parchment brightened briefly, and the ink began to form beneath it. It wrote itself, scroll retrieved from the library of forgotten wishes. Dreamer unnamed, age unknown. Wish, to keep believing in the small. To be carried by Whispelle on her first journey. Then, as though completing a thought, the book added a final line. In return, a star will rise quietly tonight, unnoticed by many, but seen by one. The wish is safe. Whispelle touched the page gently, sealing it with a breath. The scroll vanished into light, its memory now part of the record. The book gave a quiet flutter, pleased perhaps, then returned to stillness, the ink now cooled to a soft glow. She stood in silence for a moment, letting the feeling settle in her chest. A record had been made. A remembrance written softly enough to last forever. Whispelle left with lighter steps, the echoes of those gentle gifts flickering in her thoughts like candlelight. Her wings unfurled once more, and with a slow breath, she stepped from the library's hollow back into the open night. The stars above blinked quietly, and somewhere far below, a child stirred in sleep, their pillow a little warmer, their dream a little brighter. As Whispelle glided once more into the open sky, the hush of the library faded behind her like the closing of a soft curtain. The air shifted again, lighter now, tinged with the scent of blooming things and the subtle hush of crickets in sleep. She followed a current known only to the dream folk, a warm breeze that drifted just beneath the stars and curled around the hills of the sky like a ribbon tied by moonlight. Soon the sky parted ahead of her, revealing a wide, luminous clearing resting atop a bed of gently rippling clouds. This was the moonlight meadow, a place so quiet and so soft that even the stars dimmed slightly out of respect. It was not a place for work or travel, but for gathering, for resting, for weaving moments into meaning, and for letting the gentle rhythms of the night carry you. The meadow glowed in shades of pale ivory and soft silver, blanketed with moonflowers that opened only in silence. Their petals were thin as breath and wide as a child's palm, pulsing faintly with each wave of starlight. They made no sound as they moved, only the suggestion of movement, a gentle swaying, like the world nodding itself to sleep. Whispelle hovered above the blossoms for a moment, letting her feet barely brush their silken tops. The moment her toes grazed the petals, the meadow responded with awareness. A few of the moonflowers turned slightly in her direction, recognizing her presence. She dipped lower and landed gently on a flat patch of cloudgrass that stretched out in a quiet welcome. As she wandered through the meadow, the petals of the moonflowers leaned toward her ever so slightly, their glow mingling with the shimmer of her wings. She brushed them as she passed, and in return, they offered quiet reflections, flashes of dreams not yet born, the feeling of a soft bedtime kiss, the way a blanket smells when it has just come out of the sun. In the distance, she could see the silhouettes of her companions waiting, not fellow fairies, but the twilight beings who tended this space. She would greet them soon. But for now, she let herself breathe in the hush, feel the rhythm of the sleeping world as it pulsed beneath her feet, and remember that rest is not the absence of motion, but the place where motion gathers strength. The meadow breathed with her, and for a while, the stars seemed just a little closer. Toward the far edge of the moonlight meadow, where the silver petals grew smaller and the cloudgrass began to ripple like quiet water, lived the twilight companions, gentle beings whose steps made no sound and whose presence brought peace. Whispelle had heard stories of them in the celestial grotto, passed down like secrets wrapped in lullabies. But tonight would be her first time seeing them herself, as a guest of the meadow and a fellow keeper of dreams. The first to appear was the sleepwalk fox, its form unfolding from the mist as though born of stardust and story. It was long and lean, with fur the color of ash and moonlight. With every step it took, small silvery prints bloomed on the cloudgrass behind it, fading just as quickly into nothingness. Its eyes were half closed, as though it were always dreaming, even while awake. It circled Whispelle slowly, measuring her silence, sensing her calm. The fox moved with a grace that belonged only to the night, its tail trailing sparkles that fell like petals. Whispelle bowed slightly, and the fox nodded back, acknowledging her with a curl of its whiskers and a breath like wind through feathers. Then came the dew otters, small and round, with soft silken fur that shimmered in shades of misty gray and pale lavender. They rolled in gently from a stream of silver water that wound along the edge of the meadow, a stream made of condensed dreams. It flowed quietly, gathering stray thoughts that had floated too far, and the otters tended it like a garden, gathering dreams in their tiny paws and spinning them back into glowing droplets. The otters squeaked softly when they saw Whispelle, a sound like laughter held in a teacup. They swam toward her, twirling lazily in the dream stream and leaving behind tiny spirals of light. One popped up beside her and offered a glistening dewdrop cradled in a curled leaf. Whispelle took it gently and held it in the palm of her hand. Within the drop shimmered a memory. A child spinning in circles on a sunlit hill, arms outstretched, a tooth barely loose, but already wiggled free by joy. The moment was bright and golden, held perfectly within the dewdrop. Whispelle smiled, closing her hand slowly, letting the moment sink into her. The fox circled closer and lay down near her feet, curling into a tight spiral. Its breathing matched hers, long and deep, and for a moment, Whispelle felt her own heartbeat soften. The otters gathered around, some curling into the petals, others diving and tumbling in the dream stream. Their energy was not hurried, never rushed. Even their play felt like rest. Whispelle sat down gently beside them, folding her legs beneath her. One of the otters climbed into her lap and rested there, its fur cool and damp with star dreams. Together, they watched the meadow sway, a soft tide of bloom and breeze. No words passed between them. None were needed. The fox dreamed with open eyes. The otters spun the dreams of children like threads of silver wool. And Whispelle, the young tooth fairy with starlight on her wings, became part of their stillness, if only for a while. Above them, a low breeze passed through the meadow, and the moonflowers hummed softly in reply. It was a sound that didn't quite reach the ears, but resonated somewhere deeper, a reminder that sleep is not just rest, but return. A way of coming home to something forgotten and deeply known. Whispelle would soon rise again and carry on with her journey. But for now, in the company of the sleepwalk fox and the dew otters, she simply was. As the stars shifted their quiet positions overhead and the moonlight meadow rustled with breath-like breeze, a hush deeper than silence fell across the blossoms. The petals of the moonflowers began to glow a little brighter, their silvery hue edged now with a faint pearlescence, like the inside of a lullaby. Whispelle felt the air change, as though something long awaited was about to unfold. It was time for the petal ceremony, the ancient rite of thanks whispered by all fairies who had gathered the gifts of the night. Not only the teeth and dreams of children, but also the stories, memories, and moments entrusted to them. This ceremony, passed down through generations of skyfolk, was not meant to honor the fairies themselves, but the dreamers. The children below, asleep and unknowing, whose small acts of trust turn the night into something sacred. Whispelle rose gently from the soft bed of cloudgrass, brushing specks of light from her lap. The dew otters gathered around her, forming a circle of quiet joy, their sleek fur glistening with scattered dreamlight. The sleepwalk fox stretched languidly, its long tail trailing across the meadow like a paintbrush dipped in stardust, and settled near the circle's edge to watch with slow blinking eyes. At the heart of the meadow, a blossom larger than the rest began to unfurl, a moon-petal cradle, rare and luminous, opening like a slow breath. Within its velvet center, the air shimmered with soft threads of memory. This was where the night's collections would be offered, not given away, but shared, honored. Whispelle stepped forward and reached for her pouch. From it, she gently withdrew a tiny bundle, a pale velvet wrap no larger than a button, tied with a strand of moon hair. She opened it slowly, revealing a collection of stardust-flecked baby teeth, each one carrying a shimmer of memory, a laugh shared with a parent, a dream spoken aloud for the first time, a bedtime song hummed on repeat. They glowed faintly in her palm, not bright, but steady. With great care, she placed them one by one into the moon-petal cradle. As each touched the petal's core, a gentle light rose from it, curling upward into the air like mist touched by candlelight. The air filled with the scent of warm bread and chamomile, the scent of comfort. Then she took the scroll, the forgotten wish, and gently placed it beside the teeth. It, too, began to glow, its edges curling as if warmed by breath. It unfolded into a star-shaped bloom, a sign of its acceptance by the meadow's ancient magic. The dew otters chirped softly, their paws clasped in front of them. The sleepwalk fox gave a low, melodic hum, almost a song, and the moonflowers surrounding the cradle leaned inward in a graceful bow. All acknowledged the gift. With her wings fluttering slowly behind her, Whispelle stepped back. She bowed her head, not as a performer bows to applause, but as a child bows to an old tree, full of respect and quiet awe. Then something wondrous. The cradle, now filled with tooth gifts and dream fragments, slowly closed around them, its petals folding inward like fingers in prayer. A soft light pulsed from within, and when the petals finally reopened, the contents had vanished, transformed. Above the meadow, new stars blinked into existence, small, shy glimmers, scattered across the sky like fireflies. Each one was born from a story, a memory, a dream once placed under a pillow, and now returned to the universe. Not lost, not gone, just become. The fairies say that these stars shine a little warmer than the rest, because they are closer to the heart. Whispelle gazed upward, feeling a swell of warmth rise in her chest. Her part in the night's gentle magic had been fulfilled. She turned once more to her companions and nodded. The dew otters waved with soft paws. The sleepwalk fox yawned and stretched, then disappeared back into the mist from which it came. The meadow quieted again, the blossoms swaying in contentment. It was time to move on, but Whispelle would carry this moment with her, tucked beside her star compass, wrapped in a ribbon of moonlight and memory. The sky beyond the moonlight meadow opened like a stretch of calm sea, wide and soft, tinted in the palest hues of lavender and silver. As Whispelle floated upward once more, carried on a breeze that hummed of petal dust and spent dreams, she felt the quiet weight of completion begin to settle around her. A lull in the rhythm of the night. Ahead, nestled atop the tallest of the drifting cloud banks, she saw it. The Cloud Hopper's Rest, a broad, slow-moving expanse of sky cloud where time seemed to fold in on itself like a blanket being tucked in. No one rushed here. Even the stars blinked a little more slowly. The Cloud Hopper's Rest was not named for any single creature, but for all those who traveled the skies during the night. Fairies, dreamweavers, whisperers, breeze carriers, and the beings who ferried nighttime stories on the backs of invisible wind. All came here when the breath of their journey called for quiet. Whispelle descended gently, her wings barely making a sound as they slowed their rhythm. The cloud beneath her feet gave slightly, welcoming her with a softness like the inside of a dandelion puff. Around her, other quiet figures dotted the cloud hill, some curled into feathered nests, some perched on glowing stones, some simply lying flat on their backs, staring into the hush above. She walked a little way from the edge and found her favorite kind of resting place, a memory nest, woven from down feathers and old whispers, stitched together by the breeze and left out for any traveler in need. It waited beneath a small, humming glowstone. Its light tinted the pale yellow of comfort. Whispelle tucked herself into the nest, wings folded around her like a shawl. Above her, the sky stretched endless and still. The clouds pulsed faintly beneath her, like a great, slow heartbeat. She watched the stars for a time. The ones who had watched thousands of journeys unfold and still never shone the same way twice. All around her, the soft sounds of sleep mingled, the content sigh of a dream messenger settling down after a long glide, the fluttering murmur of lullaby creatures drifting between cloud layers, the occasional bell chime tone of a sky moth folding in its wings. No voices, no questions, just rest. From the pouch at her side, Whispelle withdrew her star compass. It had stopped spinning, now glowing a calm shade of blue-gray, the color of reflection. She placed it beside her, pressed a hand to her chest, and let her eyes flutter closed. In that moment, the journey she had just taken flowed back through her. The lanterns of the star-touched village, the whispering scrolls of the library, the petal-laced ceremony beneath the moon. All of it warm, all of it quiet, all of it tucked inside her now. There were still children to visit, still dreams to honor, still tiny gifts left under pillows that waited to be seen. But for now, this was the space between stories, the pause between one soft breath and the next. Whispelle smiled without opening her eyes. Here, in the Cloud Hopper's Rest, even time had permission to dream. The memory nest cradled Whispelle like a whisper from long ago, soft, curved, and threaded with the breath of stories too gentle to speak aloud. It was woven by time and intention. Each strand of the nest had once been part of a dream, a sigh, a loving word spoken into a child's hair. These fragments, gathered by the wind and stitched together by unseen weavers, had come to rest here, waiting to offer rest to someone who carried dreams. Whispelle nestled deeper into the curl of the nest, her wings folding neatly around her like a blanket. The surface beneath her felt like velvet warmed by the last sunlight of the day. It gently responded to her presence, pressing upward with the same care as a parent tucking in a child. Around the rim of the nest were feathers from sky swans and dusk harriers, creatures that drifted silently across the upper heavens, leaving gifts in their wake. These feathers shimmered in tones of dusk pink, cloud gray, and starlight blue. Each one held a memory, carefully preserved in its barbs. And tonight, they chose to whisper some of them to Whispelle as she lay in their care. One feather released a memory of a child spinning in a puddle after the rain, laughing as the water sparkled like a dance of stars. Another murmured the scent of a blanket freshly laundered, still warm, wrapped around small shoulders on a snowy morning. A third held the echo of a lullaby, hummed low and slow, the tune familiar and wordless, the kind that wraps around a moment and keeps it safe. These weren't her memories. They belonged to the dreamers, the ones who placed teeth under pillows, who made wishes and forgot them, who closed their eyes each night hoping that something magical still waited in the dark. But in this nest, for this brief and tender time, the memories were shared freely as offerings. Whispelle let the memories settle around her. She simply let them be, like stars overhead, far away, and yet full of quiet presence. The light around the nest dimmed slightly into deeper restfulness. Above her, a mist of silver drifted across the sky, stirred by the slow passage of the dream wind, the great current that carried lullabies from home to home across the world. The air smelled faintly of moon tea and soft feathers. Whispelle closed her eyes. She did not sleep, fairies like her rarely did, but she rested in the way old trees rest, in the way still ponds hold moonlight. Her mind floated, unburdened. Her heartbeat slowed to match the quiet rhythm of the stars above and the hum of the cloud beneath. And in that stillness, the memory nest hummed back to her. You are not alone. You are part of all of this. You are held. She let those truths wrap around her like threads of cloud lace. The nest held her for as long as she needed. No longer. No less. When it was time to rise again, she would know. But for now, Whispelle was simply still, and the sky, in its infinite hush, was still with her. While Whispelle rested in the gentle curve of the memory nest, a hush even softer than silence settled around her. The sky had stilled, and the stars blinked slower, as though they, too, were waiting for something delicate to arrive. From beyond the edges of the cloudhopper's rest, a breeze stirred, thin and high, not cold, not quick, but purposeful. It was the wind of letters, known to dream carriers and sky guides as one of the kindest breezes in the heavens. It moved like a message half remembered, brushing gently across cloud tops, seeking those who had carried stories through the night and returned to rest. As it reached Whispelle's nest, it brought with it a scatter of starlit slips, tiny glowing scrolls no longer than a petal, no wider than a whisper. They were letters left behind by children, never penned or spoken aloud, but felt deeply, fleetingly, in the quiet before sleep. The wind scattered them softly around the memory nest, letting them land like feathers along its rim. Some unfurled immediately, curious and open. Others curled a little tighter, waiting for readiness. Whispelle opened her eyes and sat up slowly, sensing their presence. She reached for one glowing scroll, its edges dusted in violet light. As she unrolled it gently, no words appeared, only a feeling, warm and full. It was the joy of a small hand under a pillow, tucking a tooth away, while secretly hoping to catch a fairy mid-flight. That moment of hope, pure, fragile, electric, shimmered in her chest. Another letter rolled to her lap, brushed in gold. It pulsed with laughter, a memory of a child spinning in their blanket, too excited to sleep, whispering thank you into the dark, just in case someone could hear. Whispelle smiled, tracing the air above it with one finger, offering her own silent reply. Some letters hummed with softer feelings, a child wondering, in the quiet of bedtime, if their fairy knew their name. Another wishing that their tooth would turn into something really magical, like a star or a dream they could ride. These thoughts, so easily forgotten by morning, had been caught by the wind and delivered here, to the one who needed to hear them. Whispelle collected each message into her heart. That was the task of a fairy, after all, not only to retrieve, but to reflect, to turn small gestures into starlight, to make invisible feelings feel seen. She raised her hands gently, and the wind of letters began to circle again, lifting the messages she had read and carrying them upward. Released, transformed into glimmers that would drift through the skies, reminding the stars what it meant to be wondered about. The final letter to land on her palm glowed in softest blue. It unfolded as if it had waited until all the others had passed. This one held a whisper so quiet it nearly dissolved. I hope someone notices the tiny things I do. Whispelle pressed it to her heart. That hope, so small, so universal, would never go unnoticed again. The wind gave one final sweep around her and lifted gently into the night, its duty done. As the memory nest settled once more, Whispelle leaned back, starlight glinting on her cheeks. She had received what she needed, connection. And far below, tucked into homes and beds, the children slept on, unaware, perhaps, of the quiet loop that had closed around them like a lullaby. But the sky knew, the wind knew, and Whispelle would always know. The stars had shifted slightly. The breeze, once full and curious, now drifted slower, heavier, like a blanket slipping down in the earliest hours of morning. Somewhere on the edge of the sky, dawn was beginning to think about rising, though it hadn't yet stirred. It was still night, but only just. The softest part. The part where dreams settle more deeply and the world breathes its quietest breath. Whispelle rose gently from the memory nest, her wings stirring with the soft rhythm of the air around her. The glow of the cloudhopper's rest faded behind her with each beat, not lost, but left in stillness, ready for the next traveler. She carried no rush in her steps, only the hush of completion. Her pouch was lighter now, her heart fuller. She followed the curve of the wind that led her back toward where her journey began, toward the celestial grotto, hidden deep in the folds of the sky. The silver thread appeared once more beneath her, gleaming faintly like the trail of a falling star paused in midair. It welcomed her back, responding to her return with a glow that pulsed gently beneath her feet. The sky itself seemed to lower its voice as she traveled. Clouds folded around her like petals. Constellations softened their gleam. Even the dreaming trees along the path bowed slightly in passing, their branches humming a low tune meant only for those who had walked between stories and come back changed. As Whispelle neared the mossy ridgeline of the grotto's hidden crest, the entrance opened for her, the stone bending as though an exhale, allowing her to pass without sound. The grotto inside glowed warmly, its walls still lit by the soft memory light of those who had passed through earlier in the night. Nothing had changed, and yet everything felt different. The moss beneath her feet welcomed her home with a slight bloom of luminescence. Her wings drooped slightly in rest. She crossed the central chamber and made her way to the small pool at the far end, where the sky itself was gathered, a still mirror, deep as forever, known as the cradle of stars. Here, all the treasures collected during the night were offered back to the universe as gifts, transformed by love, care, and quiet attention. Whispelle reached once more into her pouch and withdrew the final bundle, a velvet wrap that pulsed gently with warmth, containing the last 2 teeth she had collected. These had come from twins who had fallen asleep with their hands clasped, each dreaming the other's dreams. She placed the bundle into the cradle. The surface of the pool rippled, then settled. A glimmer rose from the center, first faint, then brighter, and floated upward, joining the sky once more. Another star born, quiet and kind. She watched it rise, then turned to the shelves near the grotto wall, where her tools would be stored until needed again. She unhooked her star compass and hung it beside the others. Placed the moon spoon on a bed of thistle moss. She folded her pouch and laid it gently to rest, the scent of cloud petals lingering on its threads. Other fairies moved quietly in the grotto, each returning from their own journeys, their own hushes gathered, their own memories offered back to the world. No one spoke, yet the room hummed with recognition, a melody of quiet knowing. Whispelle stepped back into her corner nook, where the velvet lichen curved like a cradle. She curled into it slowly, her wings folding around her shoulders. There was nothing more to do. The night had received her journey, and the sky was full. She closed her eyes, and the stars, as always, began to hum her gently into the stillness. At the very heart of the celestial grotto lay a pool unlike any other in the world, above or below. It was still, perfectly round, and endlessly deep. It was called the Cradle of Stars, and it was here that the gentle work of dream carriers came to rest. The pool shimmered with echoes, the faint imprint of every tooth, every dream, every wish ever entrusted to the night. Its surface held no ripples unless touched with care. And even then, it never splashed. It only shimmered, softly folding inward, like a thought remembered. Whispelle approached the cradle in silence. Her wings, now folded tightly around her shoulders, made no sound. She held her final offering from the night cupped in her hands, 2 tiny teeth, twinned in shape and memory, wrapped in a scrap of sleep-woven cloth and laced with moon thread. As she knelt beside the pool, the chamber around her dimmed just slightly, as though the grotto itself leaned closer to listen. She took a deep breath to honor the moment and slowly unwrapped the cloth. The teeth glowed faintly in her palm, their edges dusted with the shimmer of dreams. One pulsed with the rhythm of laughter, the other with the warmth of a shared secret. Though small, they carried entire childhood nights within them. They had been loved, and they had been trusted. With the tenderness of someone laying down a story, Whispelle lowered her hands and let the teeth slip gently into the cradle. There was no splash, no sound. But the surface of the pool brightened instantly, glowing from within. A single ring of light spread outward, slow and smooth, then began to rise in the form of a wisp, a thread of silver that lifted through the air, curling upward like a sigh released. The grotto quieted further, and all around her, other fairy offerings paused in their glow, as if to watch. The light rose until it reached the domed ceiling, where it touched a point of darkness, and there, a new star flickered into being. Tiny, quiet, whole. It joined the constellation of dreams that filled the upper sky, unseen by human eyes, yet deeply felt by those who closed their eyes with wonder. The cradle dimmed once more. The offering had been received. Whispelle pressed her hands to her chest, her head bowed in stillness. The ritual was never rushed. No matter how many times she would one day return to this place, each offering would always be new, always sacred. Every child's story, no matter how small, deserved a place in the sky. As she stood, she noticed something soft unfolding nearby. A small starflower had opened at the edge of the cradle, a rare bloom that appeared only when a gift carried extra light. She knelt again and brushed her fingers along its petals, each one humming with the echo of twin dreams. Not a reward, a recognition. She left the flower in place. Its glow would remain through the rest of the night and fade gently come dawn, its light never lost, only passed forward. Whispelle stepped back, allowing the space around the cradle to breathe. Others would come soon, older fairies with long wings, younger ones just beginning their journeys. The cradle would greet each offering with the same soft stillness. But for now, she lingered just a moment longer, letting the warmth of the rising star settle deep inside her. Then, with a final breath, she turned and made her way to her resting alcove, where dreams curled into the stone like roots, and the night prepared to fold itself into sleep. Whispelle stepped softly through the quiet chambers of the celestial grotto, her wings drawn close, her footsteps as light as the drifting threads of dream mist that curled along the mossy floor. The cradle of stars now shimmered gently behind her, its light dimming into a restful glow. Most of her tools had been tucked away, her pouch hung upon its hook, her star compass at rest. But one final task remained, not written in any scroll, nor required by any rule. A tradition, quiet and old. A moment for every fairy to make their one last wish. Not for coins, not for thank yous, not even for the children below. This final wish was always simple, for the sky, for the journey, for the heart. A promise made softly and sent gently into the hush before morning. Whispelle made her way to the far end of the grotto, where a smooth stone sat beneath a circular opening in the ceiling. The stars above blinked lazily, still watching. It was a wishing place, worn smooth by countless evenings and generations of fairy footsteps. No ceremony accompanied it. No light flickered. It was simply a place to be. She climbed onto the stone and sat down cross-legged, letting her hands rest in her lap. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of moss and memory. For a while, she just sat there, breathing slowly, listening. And then softly, she spoke, not aloud, but inwardly, where true wishes live. I wish that wonder never fades, that small things remain beautiful, that I may always walk gently, even when unseen. The stars above pulsed slightly, like a sigh of approval. She reached into the small pocket tucked near her sash, a place she reserved for quiet treasures, and removed the folded scroll she had carried since her visit to the library of forgotten wishes. The one that had read, "I hope I never stop believing in small things." She had added her own note to it now, scrawled in shimmering ink, "Neither will I." With a final smile, she kissed the scroll lightly and let it float upward through the circle of sky. The wind caught it instantly, twirling it like a feather, and lifted it higher and higher until it vanished into the quiet tapestry above. Whispelle closed her eyes. The stars were watching. The night was holding its breath. The hush of the world deepened. And somewhere far below, 1,000 tiny stories continued to unfold, each one delicate, each one unseen, and each one, somehow, part of everything. Her wish had been made. With her final breath of the night, she whispered, "Good night, little dreamers. I see you. I carry you. Sleep well." And with that, the sky itself exhaled. A breeze curled around her like a lullaby. Whispelle curled into her velvet nook once more, starlight at her feet, dream dust on her wings. Her eyes closed gently, and she drifted. Wrapped in quiet, held by night, and folded into the hush where wishes sleep. And now, as the final shimmer of stardust settles, and Whispelle rests in the velvet hush of the celestial grotto, we too can return to the quiet. The sky is still. The meadow sleeps. And somewhere above us, soft wings fold gently in the dark, their journey complete, for now. The night has grown quieter still, the stars easing into their dimmest glow, their light like the last notes of a lullaby fading across a child's bedroom. The breeze that once carried letters and dreams now curls gently around rooftops and tree branches, brushing through curtains and windows, bringing with it the faintest memory of story. And perhaps, just perhaps, if you listen very closely, you'll feel it, a hush deeper than silence, a soft pulse in the air, as if something small and magical just passed overhead. You might even wonder, just for a moment, about the tooth you once left behind, whether it too was gathered with care, whether it too became part of the sky. And you would not be wrong to think so. In that space between sleep and dreaming, between the hush of breath and the curl of memory, the world becomes a little more tender, a little more gentle. That is where the tooth fairy lives, not just in myth or in sparkle, but in kindness. In the quiet recognition of growing up, and in the magic of believing something small can still matter greatly. Tonight, you've journeyed alongside Whispelle, a young fairy with soft wings and a softer heart. Together, you crossed bridges spun from sleep, wandered through the star-touched village where dream lanterns glow, and paused to listen inside a library where forgotten wishes still hum softly. You rested beneath the moonflowers, curled into a memory nest, and watched stars rise from teeth once tucked beneath pillows with care. And now, it is your time to rest. Feel your head gently sinking into your pillow. Let your breath slow just a little more. Let your limbs grow heavier, as if the night itself is tucking you in. The sky above will continue its soft watch. The petals will continue to bloom in silence. And the fairies, the quiet, kind ones, will keep their gentle work, drifting between dreams, collecting not just teeth, but wonder. You've walked with them now, and in doing so, a part of your own dreaming heart has been woven into the story, shimmering faintly, tucked gently into the night. There is no need to hold on. Just let go. Let go into the hush, into the silver thread, into the whispered tales from the night sky. Thank you for joining me on tonight's journey. I hope it brought you a little peace, a little wonder, and a little closer to rest. Until next time, sweet dreams.